Folks, we may have a very surprising CPI reading tomorrow. Specifically, I'm talking about headline and month on month. And I just want to share this with Anna Kelly, our Wednesday expert and friend of the channel, because I think it could be game changing for the stock market, for housing, for interest rates, and it could cause the Fed to go on their back foot. But before we get into it, Anna, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Always great to be here you on Wednesdays.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen this. I just caught it yesterday evening. The expectation for headline inflation, which we will get tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. Pacific, was zero, which we've had before. It would be the second zero, I think, in the last 4 or 5 months. It has now been revised, Anna, to a negative zero point 0.1. I think if we get a negative, aka deflationary month on month headline reading, it's just the market's gonna go bananas and the Fed is going to be put on their back foot, because now we're not talking inflation. Now we're talking deflation. You're going to get Kathy Wood. You're going to get Elon Musk. You're going to get Jeremy Siegel. You're going to get all these talking heads saying, see, I told you the Fed is wrong. They're a bunch of idiots and morons. It's deflation. The world's ending. Ah, what do you think?
I think you're right. I think that that's what they're going to do because again, everyone's looking for any inkling of hope that the Fed is going to stop raising rates, that the Fed is going to stop, causing potential debt crises and a hard landing recession. And so any one piece of data that someone could hold on to and say, okay, this is it. The Fed needs to stop. They're going
It's
to do
over.
that.
They won.
Yeah. I think that it's short-sighted or it's very narrow focused. It
Just
doesn't
a
look at the
little.
the the whole of the picture of the health of the economy. And we've talked about this a little bit, but there's all kinds of indicators that the Fed looks at and the National Bureau of Economic Research looks at to determine whether we're in a recession or whether we're in expansion, to determine the health of the economy and where we're headed. CPI is just one little piece of that. PCE is just one little piece of that, right? So the Fed is looking at all kinds of data. And I will say this, 8 out of 10 of the key markers are pointing toward heading in a contraction, in a more recessionary area. So the Fed is not going to look at inflation as a whole as the only thing. They're going to continue to focus on wages and jobs, because wages and jobs are the two things that are keeping inflation up, especially in the services area, also a little bit in food. And so until they see wages and jobs come down, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but I think they're going to keep on tightening, or at least tighten a little bit more and then pause. And so don't expect something earth shattering. The markets will rally, but
Oh,
as soon
yeah.
as they see the Fed raise rates again, the markets are going to freak out. And it's why I don't watch the stock market too much,
Mhm.
because they are too short-sighted and they focus on one piece of info instead of the whole picture.
Yeah, again, I don't know if it's going to happen. Obviously, it's a short 24 hours or thereabouts away. But yeah, if we get a negative zero point 0.1 headline CPI month on month, the bond market the rates are going to fall because, again, everybody's going to scream, see, they're wrong. Stock markets will rally because, again, they're a forward indicator. But
Yes.
I think most importantly, the Fed is going to have to reverse their talk. They're going to be held, their feet will be held to the fire, because as of today, we have, what is it, Mary Daly, Bullard, all these other people basically saying we're going higher. We might have to go to 6%. We have to go higher than the dot plot at 5.4. All of these scary talking tough, that won't play if we get a negative reading. Nobody's
Right.
going to listen. They're going to have to come up with a different talk track. Um, it could be a
Yeah,
while to watch.
I think they're listening, Michael, but I think it's like selective hearing. It's like when my husband says, "Oh, I didn't hear that when I asked him to take out the trash," but he hears everything else, right? Says every wife everywhere. It's
Olivia, did you
selective
plant that?
hearing. You bring it
That's,
out of me, Michael, right?
there you go. Yeah.
But I think it's selective hearing. Cal
Yeah.
has been extremely explicitly
Oh,
clear.
very
We
clear.
are targeting wages. Wages are untenable compared to the economy. We need to bring wages down. We need to increase unemployment a little bit to get things back in balance. He has told us what to look for since several press conferences ago. They are looking more at wages and unemployment than they are looking at this next CPI number. And so I don't think, and I've also read the Fed minutes, and they're none of them talking about pivoting this year. All of them are talking about raise it a little more. Let's see how things pan out with wages and unemployment primarily as much as CPI. And then maybe we pause. But none of them brought up in their own meetings, should we pivot? Should we watch this number? And when it comes down, do we stop and do we pivot? None of the Fed governors are talking about pivoting at all this year, no matter what the data says. They're saying, let's go up high enough. When we think we have enough, we'll pause and we'll see how it goes.
I think there's two things that I will give I don't know if credit or I guess I'll say acknowledge from the Fed, this Fed. They are being remarkably clear. If you have, or if you're our age, you remember Greenspan, who would say 1,000 words and nobody understood what the hell he was saying. I mean,
Yes.
it was called Fed speak for a reason. I think Powell's done a great job of making it crystal clear. He's unwavering, at least to this point. But what I think happens, again, this is just if a negative number happens. I think what will happen February, well, I guess it will be March, or it'll be January 31st and February 1st. It's a 2-day meeting. And then when we get those meeting minutes, which will probably be around the middle of, what would that be? Middle of February, I guess. You'll actually see some dissension for the first time because they are, like you say, they are on the same page today. I think we get a negative number. You start to see the doves and hawks clearly separate and we get some dissension. And I think that's good. I think a healthy debate is a healthy debate. When all people are on one side of the boat, it's typically unbalanced and you risk crashing or falling in or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I think that could happen. And I think that just leads to pausing. And again, I think the Fed wants to get to pausing. I think they have 2 more rate in hikes ahead, even if it's a negative number. But then it's just, we're going to pause because we don't agree. We're going to pause because we don't agree. We're going to pause because we don't agree.
Yeah. I think you could be right. I will throw out one interesting tidbit. So I read a book called Lords of Easy Money. Have you read that?
Not yet. I have it though. It's a red book,
It's a
right?
great book.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
great book. And part of the things that they talk about is what happens in these Fed minutes. And so
Mm.
Tom Honig is a former Fed governor, and he was really dissenting pretty hard during some of the post 2008 Fed actions, and as well some things going back in the 1970s. And what was interesting is there's kind of this unwritten rule amongst the governors that you don't dissent against the president of the Fed, not officially. And so you do have to read with a little grain of salt these minutes, knowing that they want to all look like they're unified and on the same page. And so the minutes are not going to reflect some of the healthy debate. They're going to reflect where they ultimately end up. But I do think that there will be some that say, hey, we've probably tightened enough. We're creating some destruction of wealth, both at the high end and at the low end of the economy. And it's time for us to start pausing if this number comes down. I'm just not sure you're going to see it in the minutes, but it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, if it's not, that's a great point about the minutes. I did buy that book on your recommendation. I probably will read it on my next vacation, which is coming up. So more on that later.
Good.
But I do think we'll see it in the press, right? They have all clearly love getting in front of the microphone, clearly
Yes.
talking. So you will see it there. So Anna, how can people find you and follow you?
Great. You can find me here on this show every Wednesday and on my playlist on your channel. You can find me at social media at Anna Kelly REI Mom. And if you're a passive investor and accredited investor looking for multifamily investments, then you can follow me there at greaterpurposecapital.com.
Thank you so much.